Hello, welcome to the January 2022 meeting of the Transportation, Public Safety, and the Environment Committee of Community Board 3 Manhattan. I think I got the name of the committee right. So I'm David Crane. I'm going to be chairing tonight. I'm filling in as a temporary chair. And we have a couple agenda items. We're going to take things in order. Michelle has already explained the sort of the ground rules, how we operate the meeting. I will ask people to please, do wait until you're recognized to speak. And of course, be polite and all that. And Michelle, you are recording. Wendy, would you like to take roll, please?
Okay, David Crane, present.
Thank you.
Michelle Cooper-Smith, oh, sorry.
Present.
Wendy Lee, present. Lee Berman.
Present.
Oh, gotcha.
Wendy, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat yourself?
Tariq Darrell. Tariq. Don't see. Don't see him. Kenyelle?
Is that Kenyelle?
Hello, can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Sorry, my connection's not great at the moment.
Okay. Now, I don't think there's anything else I need to do. I've never chaired a Zoom meeting, so I apologize if I'm clumsy or if this takes you in any way back to the early days of Zoom meetings. But I believe that we should now approve the previous month's minutes. So first, are there any additions or changes from committee members for last month's minutes? I'm not positive, but we didn't meet last month, did we? That is correct. So it would be the previous month's minutes to that. So it would be the November minutes, which, anyway, are there any changes? If there are not, we will consider them approved. Okay, previous month's minutes are approved. Now, let's launch into the first presentation. The Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is going to be presenting on the impact of COVID shutdown on rodent activity and current mitigation efforts. So I'd like to ask both the committee and public to hold your hands until the presentation is done, and then we'll engage in an orderly manner after that. Thank you. Health and Mental Hygiene, are you here? Do you have a presentation?
I'm here, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Do you have a presentation you want to put on the screen for people, or are you just planning on talking?
I'm just going to talk, and then if people have questions about specific locations, I can pull up one of our maps. But for now, I was just going to talk for a little bit and hopefully also take some questions.
Thanks. Let me know when you want to start the questions. So I would like to be doing the recognizing, but go. Thank you.
Okay, here I go. Hi, everyone. My name's Caroline Bragdon. I'm the Director of Neighborhood Interventions for Pest Control, and I oversee the Neighborhood Rat Reduction Program at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. A lot of you may have been aware of our Neighborhood Rat Reduction Program prior to COVID, but I'll just share some brief points about that program and then talk to you about how COVID impacted that program and what we're doing now. So Neighborhood Rat Reduction was a 5-year neighborhood-focused rat reduction program that was launched by de Blasio that was an interagency effort to reduce rats in communities that were most impacted. And Community Board 3, which includes the priority neighborhoods of East Village, Lower East Side, and Chinatown, were amongst the neighborhoods chosen by the health department to be featured in this program. The program includes the health department, NYCHA, parks, sanitation, and the Department of Education in intensive interagency work to reduce rats, both in neighborhoods, but most importantly on city-owned property like schools, NYCHA development, parks, and community gardens, all of which there are a lot of in Community Board 3. So this program focused on intensive inspection in the neighborhoods and on city-owned property, and then collaborative follow-up, which included source reduction, like removing the garbage that was attracting and feeding rats, along with extermination and what we call stoppage, sealing up holes that allow the free movement of rats. Prior to COVID, by the end of 2019, our program was showing a lot of success, particularly at NYCHA and in parks. We had achieved, and at schools, we had achieved a 70% knockdown in rat activity on city-owned properties of focus, and we'd achieved a 30% knockdown of rat activity in the private sector neighborhoods and the overall neighborhoods we're working in. The disappointing thing about COVID was that when the city went on pause in 2020, so did our program. And so in the early months of the pandemic, my team was home to keep them safe. And then when the city kind of resumed operations, myself and all of my staff were reassigned to work on COVID. So we've had nearly a year and a half of pause of neighborhood rat reduction work. We were doing COVID work. We were staffing pods. We were doing business inspections. We were doing Key to NYC. We were doing all the other things that the city needed to do during COVID. This summer, we started resuming neighborhood related work at a limited level, but we were very much impacted by various what we call activations, where if the mayor decided to launch Key to NYC, you know, my staff would go back to that program, or when vaccine mandates went into place, my staff went into the VAX program to check businesses to make sure they were complying. So we've really struggled to keep up. All of that said, we have completed about half of the neighborhood work that we typically would do. We did complete a round of indexing in 2021. We would normally complete 2 rounds. Indexing is our neighborhood inspection effort that helps us understand where rat activity is and where it's most severe. I do have data from rat indexing from 2021 and 2020, just not as much as I normally would want. We are also still responding to complaints, but our pre-COVID, our turnaround time for complaints was less than 2 weeks. And during COVID, our turnaround time for complaints was 3 to 6 months. Again, because inspectors were redeployed. As of now, as of January of 2022, we are back. My staff are back. We are not doing COVID activations. We are still being impacted by COVID, meaning people are getting sick and are out for 2 weeks. You know, people are in quarantine because of exposures. Inspectors have to stay home, just like any parents when their school goes remote or their kids are in quarantine. We're impacted by all the same things that other programs are impacted by and by other families in New York City. But we are back, and I'm happy to say we're restarting the neighborhood work, which includes a 2022 round of rat indexing. And you may see our inspectors out. They're back out doing inspections for rats in neighborhoods. We're also doing inspections and surveys on all the city-owned property that I mentioned previously. So, you know, in a nutshell, we were there, we paused, we're back. And what we're doing for the public is we are posting all of the data for our inspections and our follow-up actions, like summons issuance or exterminations. It's all posted on our public-facing rat portal so that the public can see where we are and what we're doing. And I would encourage you to look up that map, nyc.gov/rats, if you have particular interest about one particular property, or you can ask me tonight to follow up on a property, and I'm happy to do that as well. So just a couple of other bullet points, and then I'll stop and ask for questions. We've also managed to keep our free Rat Academy training available throughout the pandemic by offering it remotely. So for property owners that may be struggling with rat activity during the pandemic, we would invite them to go to our website, learn about the free Rat Academy, and then log into this training. It's a free 2-hour training. We also, Community Board 3 has hosted many Rat Academies, but we're always open to doing another one if the community board would like to sponsor one. And we are distributing trash cans to participants as an incentive to attend and as a thank you for attending. I guess the final thing I'd like to say is to recognize that 2021 was kind of a very ratty year. There was a high level of rat activity in the neighborhoods. There were many factors that contributed to that high level of rat activity. We were coming out of a pandemic year. The city was recovering from redeployment of resources during the pandemic. There had been many pauses in public and private sector pest control during the pandemic. There were also interruptions in garbage collection. And then we had outdoor dining. That coupled with a very long and very warm and wet summer and kind of historic use of outdoor spaces for dining created environments that were very conducive to rat activity. And so, yes, there was a lot of rats in 21. And hopefully this very cold period that we're experiencing now and the fact that our staff are getting back up on their feet and back out in the neighborhoods will mean that we'll be more on top of things in 2022. Okay, so now I guess I want to make sure I address your questions and your concerns. So why don't I stop talking and ask, is there any particular question that you have?
Thanks. So could I start with committee members or our district manager, Susan, if you have questions? So it looks like, my goodness, I just haven't been long enough. No people saying.
David, do you want me to manage this part?
Well, I can see people at the top.
Okay.
Danielle, it's your turn. Am I not correct about your name? Oh my goodness.
Danielle.
Danielle.
No,
okay, Danielle.
Danielle.
Oh, Danielle. Sorry. Hi. I'm loving to hear about this program. I come from a little neighborhood that is highly infested, and I spent the summer trying my best to, control the rat issue as they ate through my car twice. So I would love to work with you guys in whatever manner I can to help you, locate some really heavy areas. Do you know when you're going to be coming to the East Village?
Yeah, we have a case manager named Stephanie who's working in the East Village, and she's available to do walkthroughs. I can give you my email address and you can send me an email saying where your neighborhood is, what blocks and addresses are of concern, and then we can arrange a walkthrough with Stephanie, who is the dedicated inspector and case manager for East Village, Lower East Side and Chinatown.
Okay, great. That sounds awesome. I would love that.
So I'll put, yeah, we'd be happy to do it. And I'll put my, my email right now in the chat to everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, I only see I can only email the host. So David, I
can share it. I can share it. So you can just send it to me and I'll give it to Danielle, or I can share it with everyone if that works.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I'm happy to accept emails, and we also have a general, here, I'm going to also put our website and send it to you. So you'll have all three. That's the website, nyc.gov/rats, is where you can go to see recent inspections in an area, in any neighborhood or on any property. And that will, help reassure you that we've been we've been there, and in many cases, we've already started enforcement for non-compliant property owners. I'm also going to give our global, my community team has an email address that you can write to if you're interested in hosting a Rat Academy. And that team has an email of ratportal@health.nyc.gov.
Great, Michelle.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Caroline. I just have one question, which is, are you working with SAN program? I know that that's something that's been talked about as a potential rat mitigation help.
Oh, I only heard you say, have we been working with?
Oh, sorry, did I cut out? With sanitation to get the clean curbs program off. I know that that's something that's been talked about as a potential way to mitigate rats. Thank you.
We do work with Department of Sanitation. They are on our neighborhood rat reduction team, and I haven't worked directly with them on clean curbs. We were working with them on replacing litter baskets. We were replacing mesh litter baskets with solid steel or big bellies, and we've worked together on a lot of the school inspection work that we do, because schools generate so much garbage. But I'd be happy to speak with sanitation about clean curbs. It's just not something that we've worked with yet.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Thanks. Susan.
Yeah, first of all, Carolyn, I wanted to let you know, Kenyell's in a NYCHA property. And so we've not, as you know, had great success with NYCHA following up on information they get from Department of Health. And the problem is that there seems to be no way to make them do so. We had a walkthrough on First Houses with Angela from your division. And, you know, we went through all these things and they're still putting their garbage out like they're not supposed to. We've had this in the East Village with Lower East Side infill NYCHA. And again, we're, you know, told that they were given the information, they're given the instructions. So I think it's very frustrating with NYCHA. And, you know, I think it's worth pointing out that that's kind of an extra step. So I just want to say that Michelle, by the clean curbs, do you mean that compost, is that a composting program?
No, it's not composting. It's for commercial trash to be containerized. So yeah.
There's another separate composting program, I think, that Carlina's trying to get for the East Village, the one that's a pilot program in Astoria, but she has not been able to get it here yet.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Trevor, who's a board member. Trevor?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. I took a look at the map that you referenced regarding the rat portal, and it's changed a bit from the last time I looked. The entire waterfront, which is mostly parks, is now all pink, along with almost every single building along there, many of which are NYCHA. So there's two questions here. What methods are you using? And I know there's been some controversial methods. I don't know if you're still using dry ice or if Mayor Adams has managed to sell you his drowning method, or if there's something else. And the second question is, what's your relationship with parks? Because the entire East River, Pier 35, Pier 36 are all infested, especially Pier 36, which is the sanitation truck depot. And it doesn't seem like any mitigation efforts are working at all there. It doesn't go down. So I'm just here, those basic questions are what I'm asking.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I'm very familiar with all those areas. So first thing, let me say that our unit of inspection is a tax lot. And and the tax lot is, you know, basically the way that we do any one given inspection, and each tax lot is scored for rat activity, either 0, 1, 2, or 3. meaning 0, no rat activity, and 1, 2, or 3 is severity levels. City agencies like parks and NYCHA are at a little bit of a disadvantage because if we find any rat activity on that tax lot, the whole tax lot is pink, you know, the failed for rat activity. And they're huge. So it looks much more dramatic because it's a large geographic area, but that unit is still just the tax lot. It's scored the same as like a small, you know, brownstone tax lot would be, if that makes sense. All of that said, as you've noted, East River and most of the NYCHA developments, East River Park and most of the NYCHA developments along the East River, Baruch and Wald and Reese are highly rat active locations. And historically, those locations have had rats. And what we're seeing is, you know, both agencies are working on their rat activity. They're treating with dry ice. They're treating with traditional rodenticides when they can, and they're doing some cleaning. But there's an uphill battle. For NYCHA, the uphill battle is Baruch houses and the other developments along there are always under construction. And if NYCHA was here, they would explain to you that when an area of their property is under construction, it's gated off and they don't treat it. And what we've noticed is that because these developments are always under construction, they're always being undertreated, and the construction areas get really, really, really unkempt, which becomes, you know, breeding grounds for rats. I think NYCHA really needs to get a handle on the state of construction on their properties, but it's really something that they need to be at the table to talk about. We can't manage their construction vendors for them. They have to do it. And I know that they're trying, but they're struggling with that. For East River Park, the Parks Department has a team that does inspections and treatments. I think with East River Park, it's a similar issue in that it's a large area to manage. And it's an area that has a high level of foot traffic. So people are leaving a lot of garbage behind, and Parks is like constantly going in to try to clean. We do our best to assist them, but they are the lead agency on responding to rat issues in East River Park. And I know that they do. We exchange data, we exchange inspectional information with them, and they do their best to stay on top of it. But because it's a high foot traffic, popular park that people go to eat in and they leave their food waste behind, it's a challenge for Parks to maintain it. And I don't know if, is anyone from Parks or NYCHA at this meeting who would want to add anything to that?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, what I would do is, if you wanted to have further discussion, is make sure that we had an operational person from Parks and NYCHA with us at the table to kind of talk about their response. Most of what we do at the health department is we do very, very detailed inspections of their properties, and then we share those findings with the owner agency and then offer support as they do the remediation, cleanup, and treatment. For Pier 36, I can reach out to sanitation. We haven't been in regular contact with them, but in the past I have worked on Pier 36, and I'd be happy to reach out to them and ask for an update on keeping that area rat-free.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to take a question before I will go to the public in a moment. So, you know, during COVID, there have been a lot of these, well, most of the outdoor dining is happening in these curbside or street side shacks that have been built. Do you have opinions on whether they're contributing to the problem, and maybe proposals or advice?
I think it's really important that outdoor spaces be kept clean and free of food debris. And I think that the outdoor dining structures are incredibly difficult to keep clean because many of them are on raised platforms, and I'm concerned that food is getting trapped underneath them. I also I also think that these outdoor dining structures are built in and around tree pits and sewer grates that historically have had rat problems. And that when the outdoor dining structures are all right around areas that already have rats, they may be supporting rat populations more because you're bringing food right up to where rats are nesting. So I think my answer is it depends on the restaurant, it depends on the structure, and it depends on the management of that space. But I do think that restaurant owners who build outdoor dining structures are making themselves responsible for those areas, and that they have a real responsibility to vigorously clean underneath the structure and all around the structure, and to do pest remediation, meaning they should have whoever they hire to be their exterminator, those restaurants should extend extermination service to all of the outdoor dining area. And my concern is that I don't see that happening when I'm looking at outdoor dining. I see some that are perfectly well managed and cleaned, and I see others that are really not. And so, you know, I really think that more education needs to be done, and maybe some more enforcement. The health department is not the enforcing agency on outdoor dining, though. DOT is. So DOT really needs to hear from people when outdoor dining structures are contributing to rat problems, because they are the ones permitting and inspecting the outdoor dining structures.
Thank you. So as a sort of a follow-up, I believe that DOT is also the agency that is specifying, providing whatever specs or requirements there are toward building these structures, as well as the enforcement. So they are. Have they reached out to you for advice on how they should be structured?
Yes. DOT has been a good partner in that way. And yes, we've met with them several times. We've provided recommendations, and I believe they have them on their website. So I really appreciate that DOT has made a good faith effort to do that. And I think now it comes down to educating the restaurant owner, educating this restaurant staff, and then holding people accountable for the follow-up. And, you know, we can provide education around keeping an outdoor dining structure clean and rat-free, but we are not the enforcing agency, just so everyone's clear on that.
Thank you. Susan, you would like to go again?
Yeah, I'm going to say, don't want to be contrary, but DOT is not enforcing. They do, first of all, I don't think they're enforcing for garbage at all. They are months behind on other inspections, and they do issue 30-day notices, but they don't actually enforce. They will give at the most some kind of written notice. We're all suffering from that. And, you know, I understand that they're lacking staff, and as other agencies are, and may not be able to, but I think we should be clear that that enforcement is not happening.
Yeah, I'm not aware. I don't know how many inspections or what the summons issuance looks like for DOT. But again, we'd be happy to help support DOT in the enforcement work. Maybe it's a separate meeting.
Thanks. Now I'm going to go to the public. I'm going to ask people to keep your questions or comments succinct. I'm going to ask Michelle to time people, but so at 2 minutes or so, Michelle will be asking you to wrap up. So the attendee from El Sol Brillante, would you like to ask your question or comment?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carolyn Bragdon, for keeping the Rat Academy open to the public. I think it's a really wonderful resource for everyone in New York, and I plug it every time I meet somebody who hasn't heard about it. I really appreciate it. I have 2 points. I'll try to say them as fast as I can. I put the address of a particularly problematic building in our neighborhood. Avenue B is such a cute place with so many sheds, but this particular building has a couple of abandoned sheds. The back, even the front of the building is a big problem, and the back of the building where they had a deck with tables has been abandoned, and it has collapsed. And rats have a vibrant infestation underneath a very comfortable hidden kind of location, and they are traveling all up and down 12th Street. And also they just run out to Avenue B to have their wonderful, magnificent global cuisine, and then they go back under the deck behind the buildings. That brings me to my second point. I'll try to be quick, which is the garden that I represent. It's just a little further down 12th Street, but there's another one called the Down to Earth Garden, where for 40 years, the members of this garden, this Barbara Augsburger, Alexis Adler, Lorraine, and Ishig, have been fighting this rat problem. We have been collapsing holes. We've been filling them with gravel. There's no source of food in the gardens whatsoever, but the inspectors are so focused on the fact that there's soil that we easily become blamed for this. And it's not us. It's the food, it's the garbage. That's the issue. The current situation is city.
And if you wouldn't mind wrapping up, that'd be great.
And may I ask, can you repeat the name of the second garden? I have El Sol, but could I have the name of the second garden you mentioned?
Down to Earth.
Okay.
I'm done, thanks.
Okay. So I'll just say I agree with you. So I support community gardeners. We really think community gardening is so important. I love the gardening academies because the gardeners are so active and proactive about rat management, and I really appreciate that. And I do agree with you that gardens shouldn't be unfairly blamed for rats because they have healthy soil when it's really the food and the garbage that's attracting them. So I apologize if any inspectors gave you that impression. We do have a community garden treatment program that's set up in collaboration with Green Thumb. Are both your gardens Green Thumb? Oh, you're on mute. You're on, yeah.
No.
Can you tell me what organization is it? What's the organization that supports your gardens?
It's El Sol Brillante is an independent garden.
It's an independent.
I'm not even sure if they're
Okay.
affiliated.
Is Down to Earth independent as well, not Green Thumb?
I think Down to Earth is part of the community gardens and the Green Thumb, I believe. Okay.
So Green Thumb has community coordinators, and we've been working with Green Thumb to do walkthroughs of gardens and then extend assistance with treatment and stoppage using our weekend team. So I would encourage, I can check to see if Down to Earth is on our list, but I would encourage that garden to join that effort by reaching out to their community coordinator at Green Thumb. In terms of your garden, I mean, we can definitely do a walkthrough if you need assistance. We can look to see if this building, the building address is already been inspected and being, looking for Avenue B on my list of hotspots. Oh, 186 Avenue B was just inspected on December 9th and passed on compliance.
David, could I suggest that they maybe take this conversation offline?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But definitely engaged. They've been very helpful with the community garden that I manage. Alexis, would you like to speak? Did you need to trade contact information, or can you reach out through, it's in the chat.
I sent Anne Caroline's email address directly.
Alexis.
Yes, I'm a member of Down to Earth Garden, and it's the corner of 12th Street and Avenue B. And I've been a member for many years. We've never had this kind of rat problem until COVID. And it's because of those the shed platforms, and now they've been abandoned. And the garbage, as we know, we've all been to Rat Academy, But again, the inspectors, and I was there, they didn't get to the backyard and see the rat activity that is occurring. You could just look over the fence from the beautiful playground that was just renovated, Sauer Park. It's just full of rat holes, and it's just got to be dealt with. We're breeding the next pandemic here. My kids grew up in that playground. I would be horrified to see the rats. I've seen kids chasing rats with sticks, little kids. I mean, this is crazy. You know, I know the inspectors, and we don't, you know, it's like we're talking around health department, DOT, you know, and it's nobody's doing, you know, but this is a health emergency at 188, 186 Avenue B. The backyard is just full, but you have to go to the playground to see it.
Okay, so that's important information for us. A lot of times the inspectors may not have full access and may not see what you're seeing. So what I can do is I'll put this note, I'll ask them to re-inspect. The last time they were there was December. It's now January. I'll ask them to do a January inspection and to make a note that they must go to the rear yard.
Not to they must go to the playground, because you can, there's like this, I've been to the backyard. You really can only see it from the playground.
Thanks.
And it's just a health emergency, and the sheds are abandoned. The water is stagnant. You know, it's just rat poop. And we're like, as a gardener, I spend most of my time at rat abatement. That is crazy.
David.
I mean, we make this tree pit really nice, and then the rats move in because the garbage is there, and they, you know, you see the bags every day torn open from their little paws.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's worse than it's ever been. Susan, would you like to go now?
Yeah, I just want to ask people, please report abandoned sheds to the community board. We make lists for DOT, and we make priority lists, so please let us know.
Thanks, Susan. And so can I just make sure I understand, these are abandoned outdoor dining structures, or are they, when you say shed, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, yes, the dining structures. These restaurants appear to be holding their space till the weather warms up, but they have been abandoned. You know, nobody's using them. I see one, there's a motorcycle parked inside. The trash is left in there.
I'm sorry, Alexis. We've actually been on this over a half an hour. Okay. There's a couple more speakers, but you're correct.
Okay.
If I can just say, that's not abandoned. That's if the restaurant is still there and just is temporarily not using it, that's different than abandoned. So you can let us know.
The neighbors, it looks abandoned.
Okay, well, let's not have a back and forth if we can.
I just want to ask them to report to the community board so we can deal with it. Let us know, but specify whether the problem is that the restaurant is gone or whether it's a temporary problem, and then we will work with DOT.
Thanks. Okay. Matthew.
I'll make this quick. I have two questions. Caroline, thank you. I look forward for the Rat Academy to be back in full force. The first question that I have, do you find that when you were at your peak of being successful, were the rats leaving a certain area and moving away to another area and infiltrating them, or were they all being dealt with right there and then?
What we found was that citywide rat activity was decreasing when we did coordinated interagency work. And so the idea simply is, if you remove the food that makes them thrive and you remove the harborage that allows them to live, they simply reproduce less. So it's not that it's 100 rats and they just move next door. It's that the population decreases over time because they're breeding less often because conditions are less favorable.
So in 2019, 2020, I reside in Hillman Housing Corporation on Grand Street, Broome Street. We're next to Baruch Housing. We're next to PS 110. And we had an infiltration of rats moving from like the FDR Drive coming inward into our area. And in fact, in 2019, 2020, we did receive 2 citations from New York City's Health Department in our independent garden because of seeing rat holes. We got cited by the City of New York, even though we are not growing any vegetables, fruits, or anything of that nature. But just the presence of a rat hole, they gave us a summons. So that's all I wanted to leave you with, you know, and it makes it frustrating because we want to have these beautiful gardens in this urban environment, but the City of New York comes down and pounds us with the citations for something that we're not the cause of.
Yeah, I understand. And I have to say there's kind of like a balance here. So in 2019, we were doing, in 2019, 2018, 2017, we were doing double the number of inspections we would normally do. I had inspectors all over Community Board 3. That's how we were having success. But yeah, they were instructed anytime they saw a rat burrow, they picked it up, and they were everywhere. So yes, we found a lot of rat activity and we wrote a lot of orders. We never issue summons on the first inspection though. We always issue orders first, which go to the property owner, and the property owner always has an opportunity to call us and say, I want to get on top of this problem. What do I do to avoid getting a summons? And so in the future, if you get an order, or if the building that you're working with gets an order, you can always pick up the phone, send us an email saying, got this order. I want to solve the problem before I get a summons, and we'll work with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we're at 40 minutes on this item, just to be cognizant of the time. So committee, is there any discussion between the committee that we want, or do we want to move to the next item on the agenda? Going once, twice, I see no hands. Okay, thank you, Carolyn. And we are now going to go to our second and last item. DOT is returning to give us updates on the Grand Clinton Street study. Are you ready, DOT? And do you have a presentation you want to be made a presenter for?
Yes, please.
There is. So Carl, you actually, we don't know your last name. So for our minutes, your public, Carl.
Sure. Yeah. Let me actually, where did I go? I could even rename.
Carl, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, there we go. Carl Sundstrom. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carl from DOT. I work in the Street Improvement Program. I work for Sean Quinn. He sends his regrets. He had a last minute issue come up, so he won't be joining us, but I will present. Let me pull up my presentation here. There we go. All right, and just let me know, I'm assuming that my audio and everything is okay, but if not, feel free to stop me. Okay, and so I'm here to give an update on sort of the traffic issues surrounding the Williamsburg Bridge, especially the issues on Grand Street and Clinton Street. And so I was looking through the notes. It looks like the last time we met with you all was in March of 2020. So in that respect, you know, not much has changed on the streets, and yet everything seems to have changed. So, you know, tonight I'll go back over a lot of the concerns, you know, that we all share about the traffic issues, especially on Grand and Clinton. Talk about some of the, you know, just briefly talk about some of the changes that we've made on the streets, and then I'll present you all with a proposed traffic plan that we have and hope to implement this year, hopefully this spring. Talk a little bit also about some of the work that we'll do on Clinton Street and Broome Street, and you know, schedule next steps and open it up for discussion. So, you know, the reason I'm here and the reason we've been talking for years and years about this is primarily the traffic congestion, and mostly it's due to the traffic that's going through the neighborhood. It's coming from FDR, it's coming from Lower Manhattan, traveling traveling on Grand Street, traveling through the local streets. All of the street network is getting filled up with traffic that's headed towards the Williamsburg Bridge. And so it's extremely problematic. It's, it's causing noise, it's causing traffic queues, backing up, well into the night. There's some serious safety issues. There's a lot of sort of bad driver behavior with folks, driving the wrong way down the street, cutting queues, dangerous turns, a lot of concerns with pedestrian safety, especially at the intersection of Grand and Clinton. So, it's absolutely a problem. Slightly more recently, there's delivery issues on Clinton Street itself, with all these new buildings coming online, and causing a lot of issues and conflicts with the pedestrians and bicyclists on that street. And then, of course, there's a lot of increased development, Essex Crossing most notably, but a lot of other development sites are there's a lot of construction going on and future construction. And so that's a concern, and that's changing the neighborhood as well, and causing a lot of construction closures, which has been partially responsible for some of the delays and some of the solutions that we would like to roll out. And it's also caused a lot of, pedestrian detours and that sort of thing, especially on Clinton Street, where people were having to cross the street multiple times just to get across to Lansing. So that's sort of just setting the stage, the background for what we're talking about. And as I mentioned, and as you all know, we've been working here for years. We've done sort of shorter term, quick actions. The past few years, we updated the wayfinding signs from FDR to route people headed towards the bridge to use Houston Street, which is the street we would prefer traffic to go down. We've updated the wayfinding on both Grand Street and Houston as well to give people alternate routes. We've done some turn bans on East Broadway and Madison to sort of try to redirect some of that traffic that was coming from lower Manhattan onto like Essex and streets further west, rather than coming all the way over to Clinton Street and adding more traffic to blocks that are already over capacity. We've worked with the Trader Joe's there and Target to help them out with some of their delivery issues with their loading zone and having them improve their operations there and working with them on overnight deliveries, as well as adding loading zones to Grand Street. We've added traffic enforcement agents at some of the intersections, including East Broadway and Clinton and Broome and Essex. We've done some signal timing changes, and these have had some effect. I think some more than others. Probably the delivery things have been more helpful, perhaps, than some of the other issues. But the biggest problem is just that this is kind of a regional traffic issue that's being forced through these local streets where we don't really want the traffic. And whenever you make these changes, everybody's navigating via routing apps that route their trips on the shortest travel times. And so it's just constantly feeding cars through there. And so what we need is a larger solution and to really impact this. And of course, we've also had some, many other issues at the site and challenges that have impacted what we could do, including sort of the start and the stop of the L train shutdown and all the mitigation strategies around that. Building developments, as I mentioned, congestion pricing would make a huge difference to this issue, and that's as been delayed and continues to be delayed. Hopefully, we'll start seeing some more news on the congestion pricing soon. But unfortunately, it's looking like it'll be a few more years. Oh, sorry, just a second. Sorry, we had a little extra guest, fun from presenting at home. And okay, so let's see. So here's the proposal that we have, and this is similar to the proposal that we talked with you all about in March of 2020. And we've really kind of just been waiting, in a sense, for Norfolk to become 2 lanes of traffic and to regain its 2 lanes of traffic between Broome and Delancey. That's been closed for the building construction for quite a while. But we just learned yesterday that it sounds like they're going to reopen it to 2 lanes of traffic really soon and resurface it. So we should be good to go with this proposed plan. But we'd love to get some feedback from you all on it. But the plan is to ban the right turn from westbound traffic coming from FDR from Grand Street onto northbound Clinton, and to send that traffic over to Norfolk Street. And the reason that works is because right now it's about equal volume of traffic that's going north from Clinton Street across Grand Street up to Delancey, and then the same amount of volume roughly making that right turn from Grand onto Clinton. And that's just too much traffic for this block to handle. But Norfolk actually, with 2 lanes, has the capacity. It has more than enough capacity to take on all that volume, especially because you can have dual right turns from Norfolk Street onto Delancey, since there's no crosswalk on the east side there. So there's no conflict with pedestrians, and we can push through a lot of traffic. So that's why this plan really works. But to make it work, what we need to do is really force people to go towards Norfolk and not make that illegal right turn that we banned. And it's quite difficult to ban a right turn typically, but what we'll do is we'll take the conventional bike lane that's there now and swap it over to make it a protected bike lane, and move the parking out to make it a floating parking lane, sort of our standard protected bike lane design. And then we can add a pedestrian island to that corner there of Grand, where the right turn lane is today. And it creates a geometry where cars just physically can't, or would have a very difficult time making that right turn. And so the other benefit of this is that it not only does it move the traffic to a street where there actually is capacity, and it wouldn't be backing up onto the neighborhood streets anymore, but it also removes those right turns that are conflicting with the pedestrians that are all crossing now towards Essex Crossing. And we've heard a lot of concerns about the safety of that intersection. And so that really improves the safety of the intersection by just eliminating the conflict between turning drivers and pedestrians. It also does add that short section of protected bike lane, and then we would have a sort of a split face bike only movement to cross the bicyclist in front of the traffic at Norfolk Street. So they would have their own phase, so they don't conflict with this now. This would be a pretty high volume right turn onto Norfolk Street. And then at that same intersection of Norfolk and Grand Street, there would be an all pedestrian phase. So pedestrians would have their own crossing as well. So that's the plan. And looking at the models, it would have significant travel time improvements for the traffic, which is good. And the reason why is because the traffic would no longer be spilling back. It wouldn't be blocking the intersections. It wouldn't be, spreading out through all the local streets. It's going to a street where there's actual capacity to handle it. And then, so the timeline is we've just been waiting for Norfolk to reopen to 2 lanes. It sounds like that could happen soon. And so our goal would be to really prioritize this work and get it going in the springtime. At the same time as that, we did put in a signal request, felt like a very long time ago, to put in a traffic signal at Broome and Clinton Street. Happy to know and share with you all that we found out last week that that's been approved. So we will get a traffic signal at that intersection of Clinton and Broome, which should really improve the pedestrian crossing and the pedestrian safety of that intersection. So the goal would be, so now that's in the pipeline, it's been approved, and hopefully we could just put that all in at the same time. We could do the markings, the signal work at the same time we do the work on Grand Street. There's also that other issue on Clinton Street, which is the 2-way bike lane, and the cars that are and trucks that are very frequently parked in the bike lane. And so we've heard that we need better barriers or barriers, any kind of barriers, but definitely better barriers to keep vehicles out of that lane. And so this has become a very big priority for DOT and for the administration, and these particular blocks between Grand and Delancey are one of the high priority locations for us. So we really want to get Jersey barriers put in here. We're just we're coordinating with DSNY and FDNY now to just make sure that that they can be swept, they can be kept clear, of snow, and that FDNY doesn't have any major concerns. But hopefully that we'll find a way to make this work. And if we do, they'll be able to go in very quickly. So as soon as we find out, we'll give you guys a quick notification, and then you would expect them to come in pretty quickly. But again, this isn't approved yet. We're still in conversation, but this is a high priority location for us. So we hope to be able to put in Jersey barriers, or some type of very strong barrier that harden the bike lane there. And then also, as part of the project and the remarkings, we would love to add some additional loading zones, and sort of take another look at the loading regulations on the surrounding streets around here, to sort of just reduce these double parking issues and other loading issues in the neighborhood. So we're talking with Freight Mobility about that, and I think there are some good opportunities to add some loading zones and change the regulations as part of this project when we remark and re-sign it. And then finally, the public space unit is continuing its work with the Lower East Side BID and the community stakeholders to work at public realm improvements all up and down Broome Street and Orchard Street. So there's sort of this T there where they're looking. I think the limit is Clinton on the east side, to sort of to prioritize pedestrians and cyclists. And so the toolbox is pretty open for this at this point. There's a photo here, of the street seat that's on Broome, but the idea would be to do more of that, and possibly more. They looking at open streets, shared streets, also different circulations right now. Broome Street sort of has this weird directionality thing that we had changed the street direction for a few blocks just to sort of force drivers onto Delancey rather than cutting through the neighborhood. And it works for that, but it may not make sense anymore. So we'll also probably look at street directions, and if that makes sense to change those in some way that would improve neighborhood circulation. So you can expect to hear more from the public space unit, I'm sure very soon on their work there. And yeah, so that's sort of the timeline. We're hoping to get this work done early this year. So this, when the season starts up again in the spring, is what we'd be shooting for, depending on Norfolk Street principally. And we'll continue to coordinate with NYPD and FDNY, especially, and DSNY as well, especially on those barriers. Keep an eye out on congestion pricing, which would absolutely make a big difference in the area, but is probably more than a year off. And we'll keep working on those plans for Broome Street as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over, and happy to answer questions and take feedback.
So can I ask if there are board members who have, clarifying questions or something? Well, starting, I guess, with committee members. I see Michelle, also Susan. I see Michelle has raised her hand.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Carl, for this. I have a question about Norfolk. For where will it be 2 lanes? Like for both the 2 blocks, or just the block between Broome and Delancey?
Yes, probably the block just between Broome and Delancey is what we propose. If we needed it to be that other block in the future, there's always that option. But I think we would prefer to just do it that block, and that's, I think, the block where it's most needed.
And is that so that you can allow traffic to make the left turn off of Broome and to go straight on Norfolk? Is that why the 2 lanes? Because I used to live on that corner, and it's just god awful right now. So I'm just skeptical that it's going to get better.
I'm sorry, at the corner of Broome.
I lived at the building on the corner of Broome and Norfolk. And it was terrifying crossing. Like, you couldn't cross there at night, basically. So I'm just wondering how the 2 lanes will mitigate the sort of congestion at that corner of Broome and Norfolk.
Yeah, I mean, there's still going to be a lot of traffic going through there because there's Right. So there's the turn ban, the left turn ban from if you're going southbound on Essex, you cannot turn onto Delancey, get on the bridge. And so all the traffic gets sent down to Broome and then makes the left on the Broome and then makes the left onto Norfolk. And so that will remain as the traffic pattern. So there still will be traffic on that one block of Broome Street. And that will be a single lane of traffic just like it is today. And then it will turn onto that block of Broome and that block of, or Norfolk, excuse me. And that block of Norfolk will be 2 lanes. So the block between Broome and Delancey will be 2 lanes of traffic.
Right. I guess I'm just curious about how that alleviates the congestion at the corner of Broome and Norfolk, having the 2 lanes just between Broome and Delancey on Norfolk, because what I've seen is that people are always forcing their way through the turn from Broome onto Norfolk. I have videos if you want to see what I mean, but that's what I've experienced there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, happy to look at video. That I think that could always tell us more. The goal here is with the 2 lanes, you can process more vehicles onto Delancey itself, and that way, ideally, it would keep the intersections clear. Because right now they're backing up because it's just 1 lane, and so that with that block being 2 lanes, you can push all of that traffic through.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Lee Berman has his hand raised. Lee's in the committee.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight and presenting. As you acknowledged, this has been on the community board's radar for years now. It's been a very, very important topic that has affected this community for years. And while your plan certainly sounds like it has some improvement, it still takes Grand Street as being the on-ramp to the Williamsburg Bridge. In the past, it was Houston Street, which I think used to actually be 3 lanes in each direction, but is still wider than Grand Street. And you mentioned the left turn lane ban from Essex onto Delancey Street. Houston Street is more of really is more suited for traffic onto Williamsburg Bridge. And I know that the community, some members of the community board have been asking you guys to look and study whether or not there is any feasible plan to make a safer left turn off of Essex onto Delancey Street, which would mitigate a lot of this. So that's point 1. Point 2 is enforcement. Your new plan certainly sounds like it's going to need some enforcement. There's a dearth of enforcement right now. How do we know that in the future with this new plan, preventing vehicles from going on to Clinton, making the right turn off of Grand Street? There's so little enforcement now that without a promise from you and partnering with PD, it's maybe for naught. So that's it for now. I'll come back, David, later with some other questions.
Yeah, no, great questions, Lee. Thank you. So to your second point with enforcement, part of the idea here and the design is that it would be self-enforcing, so that we would design the corner to be so tight that you really can't, because there's the Jersey barrier protecting the bike lane there, and we would be bringing out a pedestrian island to the corner, and so it would be very difficult to make that right. It's not to say it's impossible, but it would be very difficult, and so that's part of the plan. And then I guess certainly the other part is that there are TEAs at that intersection, and I think we want to maintain, and if they're not there, we would ask them to be there.
And that's one of the asks. Is there was an agent there, I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And
but there's not one there now.
No, hardly ever, if ever. And they actually they were very good in helping to stymie some of the issues. As for self-enforcement, many of us have videos of folks running the red lights, making the illegal right turn, driving through the bike lane from Grand Street all the way to Delancey Street at speed. So if people are ticked off because they've been stuck in traffic, I don't think going over a curb is really going to stop them. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, again, like hopefully they won't be stuck in traffic to the same degree anymore. So, but yes, I agree. I've seen plenty of examples of very, very poor driving. And so, you know, we'll keep that in mind. That's a great comment. You're also, the comment about the left turn, you know, from Essex to Delancey, we did study that. It's timing wise, it's just because of the pedestrian crossing there and the length of the pedestrian crossing. And we don't want to allow permissive turns to turns that go at the same time as the pedestrian crossing. In that location, we can't do it. There's just so much traffic coming down Delancey. And then it's such a long distance that you'd have to give so much time to Essex that the timing really doesn't work out. And the reason we made the change was because we used to allow those turns and it was such a dangerous intersection. So we did have our modelers go back and look at that and see if they could find a way to do it, but they really couldn't find a way to do it. And we also, we're also trying to find a way to, you know, even try to look at if we could not allow traffic, like close the exit basically from the FDR onto Grand Street. So the Grand isn't even a possibility, but it just, again, that it wasn't, it just wasn't feasible option. So, you know, we've been looking at these scenarios and we'll continue to do so. And we'll definitely take your suggestions. And we've been modeling as much as we can and trying to find the best thing that could work given the constraints in this location. But because I definitely agree, this is not the place we want traffic to be going.
Okay, I see Trevor's hand up. Trevor?
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. I'll try and be brief because I see a lot of hands up. A few years ago, at one of the presentations, I asked for models, traffic models, because a lot of times when you shift traffic, it goes to other streets, and we don't anticipate that. However, DOT anticipates it, because I'm sure you've done modeling for this. So I'm going to ask once again, because I see the shift of traffic where you can't make that right turn, but Clinton Street is already backed up for traffic for people going to the Williamsburg Bridge. There's multiple lights that go from South Street to the bridge, which queues cars up and puts them in an intersection at times. So I'd like to see what you expect that street to look like with this new change. I think that's critical and important, especially for people who live further south on Clinton Street. I've asked for that multiple times, and every presentation I go to, regardless of the titling on our calendar, never has that model. The other thing on Clinton Street is, and this is more for clarification, you mentioned that you're going to shift the bike lanes. I'm just not clear on what you mean by that. The bike lane on Clinton Street is on the left side from South Street. Are you saying once you get up to Grand Street, you're going to shift it to the other side, or am I missing something? And lastly, well, I'll let you answer those two first because I just have a brief follow-up to that. That's it.
Okay. Sorry, Trevor, I'm going to ask you to repeat that second question because I'm in just a second, I'm taking a note about your about the traffic model because I want to make sure we get that to you.
Right. The bike lane shift. I thought I heard you say on Grand Street that you're going to shift that bike lane to the right side, but I may have heard wrong because the bike lane is on the left side two-way from South Street going up. So I'm trying to clarify what you meant about shifting the bike lane.
So it's the bike lane on Grand Street, and there's already an existing bike lane there. And
okay, so you weren't talking about Clinton Street then?
No. Okay. We're just talking. Right. We're just going to make that one protected bike lane just for a few blocks, basically Pitt to Norfolk.
All right, thank you. But just to see if we can get those models pretty quickly.
Yes, I'll making a note now, and I will make sure we get you the model. Okay.
Lee, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, so that I also misunderstood. I thought that you were talking about changing the bike lane on Clinton Street to the right-hand side. So the protected bike lane that you're going to install on Grand Street from Pitt to Clinton, will that be the plastic barriers, or will that be concrete? Do you know yet?
So it will be parking protected.
Okay. And then the other thing is it started your presentation with a discussion about a wider safety improvements through the neighborhood, and hearing concerns, complaints about cars running red lights and going the wrong direction. Grant Street from the FDR Drive to just after Lewis Street was repaved, I think almost 2 months ago. Lane markings have not yet been put back down, certainly at Grand and Madison Street and near Grand and Lewis, for more than a month. And this is in a school safety area. This is in front of a North. And I understand we say we're all concerned about safety, but for lane markings, crosswalks to not have been put back down after more than 4 weeks, how does that happen, and how soon can that be put back in? And how do we get a guarantee that when other parts of this community are repaved or repaired, that the community doesn't have to wait, hopefully, until somebody gets hurt?
Yeah, I'll have to follow up on that one. We don't do lane markings in the winter because the thermoplastic doesn't adhere to the road. And so that's the reason, I'm sure that's the reason it hasn't been remarked. As to why there was a disconnect between the resurfacing and the remarking, I'm not sure. But I can find out, when they plan on putting the markings in, but or if there's some sort of temporary measure that could be done, especially as you mentioned it, it being in a school safety area. So we'll find out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm now going to turn to the public. I see there are now 6 hands up. Again, if you could try to be succinct with comments or questions. And Michelle, I'm going to ask you if you could do 2-minute timings again. Thank you. Jason.
Hey, good evening. Thanks. My name is Jason Gers. I'm the Manhattan chair of the Activists Committee for Transportation Alternatives. And I also lived here at Grand and Clinton Street in the co-op. So I'm very familiar with this intersection. Thanks, DOT, for your attention and this really important area. I have a few kind of observations and comments and one question. So, I bike with my daughter to school on Avenue B here. Frequently, biking requires navigating around trucks parked in the bike lane on Clinton Street and head first into traffic or on the sidewalk. So it's a very dangerous situation. And I think that the loading kind of necessities of this area are some of the roots of the problem that are most important. So I would suggest loading zones could go on Broome, on Grand, as well as the Delancey Street service road, where there's kind of ample room and there's kind of long-term parking rather than high turnover parking that could serve taxis or trucks. Also at Trader Joe's, a lot of times the loading dock, which has 2 truck spaces. One of them is taken up by employees that park there in a regular personal vehicle. So, this is just bad behavior on the part of Trader Joe's that could easily make room for an additional truck in that truck bay. Also at this intersection, daylighting, there's, spots on the southwest corner of Clinton and Grand, as well as on the mid-block crossing on Clinton Street that are supposed to be daylighted or marked to be daylighted and are regularly used for drop-offs and loading. And I would suggest the DOT needs to kind of harden these daylit areas to make it easier to cross the street and put in additional loading spots. Yes.
Sorry, what was that southwest corner of Clinton and Grand? What was the other one that needs hardening?
There's a mid-block crossing across Clinton Street.
Oh, right. Okay, got it.
Broadway and Grand Street there.
Yeah.
So if you could wrap it up, that'd be great.
Yeah, just as far as enforcement, I don't think that this is really a great solution because the NYPD there normally just remain in their car and they do not get out to address any issues such as red light running. So I don't trust them to solve this problem. So I appreciate DOT coming with a self-enforced solution. And I just had one question. the proposed Grand Street bike lane, protected bike lane, is this going to be a two-way, or is this be just protected for westbound traffic on the north side? Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, so it will be just protected for the north, from the north side. Yeah, for this project.
Thank you, Matthew.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to make a few comments, and Trevor touched on one of the main ones. I think what you're missing out on is the backup, because right now on East Broadway and Clinton Street, it's already horrendous, especially, you know, more so in the late afternoon, evening hours, with people making a right turn going westbound on East Broadway onto Clinton Street. And Clinton Street cannot house so many cars at one time. But I look forward to seeing what this is going to do, you know, as far as either helping or continuing to destroy the traffic issues on Grand Street. But one thing that I want to recommend, because nothing's really changing except for moving 2 blocks up to make the right turn onto the Williamsburg Bridge. So the pedestrians that are crossing on Clinton Street on the north side, that would be, you know, much better for pedestrians. But I really feel that on the northbound, making a right turn onto Norfolk Street, you should have a right turning lane and get rid of all those parked cars, not only on Grand Street between Suffolk and Norfolk, but also on between Grand Street and Broome Street, the cars that are parked on the left and right-hand side. You might as well make that into a 2-lane street going to the Williamsburg Bridge, so that way you can occupy more cars at that traffic light. That's all I wanted to say. I really feel that it's still going to be an issue if you just leave it a 1 lane between Grand and Broome Street, and then open up into 2 lanes just for another block. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. That's a great comment. Definitely something we're looking at is whether or not we need to extend it for 2 lanes. It seems like it should work either way, but and
there's too much traffic coming on off of the FDR Drive, especially during peak rush hours. You know, but you know, you'll see.
Well, we definitely want to avoid like traffic backing up into the intersections and blocking all the intersections. So
it's not only the intersections, there's also onto the FDR Drive, you know, and that's like if you look at Houston Street and Grand Street during the peak times, you'll see that people do get off on Houston Street. They go straight down and they'll make a left on Ludlow Street to go to the Williamsburg Bridge, or they'll go to Essex Street and then make a left onto Broome Street to circle around to get onto the bridge. So when you see a backup on Houston Street and Grand Street, literally on the highway, those are because of, you know, Williamsburg Bridge traffic. But I'll give the opportunity to others. Thank you.
Thanks. Horesh.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember the meeting at Henry Street Settlement 2 years ago, right before the pandemic was called. I was riding on Grand Street, and then I was blocked by delivery trucks because there's no loading zones on Grand Street. Nothing changed. 23 months later, still no loading zones on Grand Street. This plan is nice, but again, if we're not gonna do big things here, M14A bus riders will still be stuck in traffic. We need a dedicated bus lane on Grand Street. One of the moving, there's room for 2 moving lanes on Grand Street. One is used as a moving lane. The other is used as long-term alternate side parking. Those cars are never moved, they're stored there. This space can be used as loading zones, and it can be used as a bus lane. Also, in the small streets of Essex Crossing, if you go on Broome Street between Clinton and Norfolk and Southwark, I mean, those buildings, those new buildings, they get deliveries all day. And the UPS trucks and the FedEx trucks, they just block the bike lane on Clinton, as well as all the trucks that are blocking the bike lane to deliver to Trader Joe's and Target and all of those big stores. Because again, in front of these new buildings, there's no loading zone. There's just alternate side parking. The cars are stored there. They're not moved. If we want to see big changes in the area, we need to start with removing free car parking. Thank you.
Bill.
Hi, hi, thank you. I appreciate you coming into this meeting, into the Lion's Den. I have a couple questions. One is about how often have you personally come down to the neighborhood and like what days and times? Secondly, are you aware that there's basically 2 police officers in the 7th precinct who are assigned to give traffic violation tickets? And they have other duties, so the enforcement is infrequent. And third, maybe to help us get some enforcement, do you know the contact information for who is in charge of the traffic division for the NYPD? And maybe we can contact them directly. Thank you.
Sorry, I lost my my notes here. Oh, there we go. Personally, I ride through the neighborhood on my way to and from work almost every day. So it would be, you know, the AM and PM peak periods, and I take different routes. I try to go up and down Clinton periodically. Usually, I stick to Allen, so I'm a little bit further away. But I do at least try to get there once a month in both directions, just to keep an eye on what's going on. In terms of the NYPD, I think I'm not the one who has the contact information for that. I would recommend going to the Manhattan Borough Commissioner's office for that. And those are basically your questions, right? Is there somebody from NBCO that they might be able to speak to that? Or perhaps
need his contact information if that's the question in the chat. Yeah. We can forward it to the chat. Okay, thank you. Tonto. Well, could you unmute, please?
On Grand Street, that's going to be, you're going to take away the lane on the Grand Street going west for the bike lane? Because it looks like you're talking about that.
Just we would take away the right turn lane from Grand Street onto Clinton. But
yeah, but there's two lanes there for just one right lane, and there's there for the bus lane. You understand? For the traffic just go to the west. So you're going to take away that lane too?
No,
it's just going to be one lane.
It would just be right. We'll take away the right turn lane and then and move the right turn lane over towards Norfolk.
Okay, because then in Norfolk, you're going to have like maybe double right hand lanes. You could put like just a right lane on this traffic, you understand? A right lane. So they don't cover the 2 lanes on there and that traffic on that Grand Street too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And that's one more thing. Thank you for the lights. I've been talking to the commissioner for it. So for 2 years. So thank you for Edwards.
Yes. I'm pleased that we're finally able to get that through as well.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Fanny.
Hi. So my question is not so much about this plan itself. I want to find out, have you taken into consideration the new buildings that are going to be there? I mean, there's going to be 2 new buildings opening up within the next couple of years. And I feel like, you know, we're going to have to start this process all over again once those new buildings are done and open. And I'm wondering if you are working, if the DOT is working with developers at all about like maybe placing the loading zone like in another, you know, to make sure they place the loading zone in a sensible street as opposed to what you know Target did, you know, having the loading zone right on Clinton. I mean, I think I'm just curious if if you guys are doing anything like that to get ahead of it, you know.
Yeah, no, right. That's it's a great question. I agree. The site review for the project where they added a loading zone onto Clinton Street is problematic and is the reason why we can't find a good solution. So yeah, DOT does review site plans, and I think city planning does as well. And I think they're looking at revising the way that they review these site plans. You know, in this case, these plans were reviewed, I don't know how long ago, probably 8 years ago. But obviously they had some negative impacts. And so I can't say I personally have looked at what the new site plans will be for the rest of Essex Crossing. But I think the problem itself is going to be the same. I mean, the issue here is really a regional traffic problem that's getting pushed through the neighborhood. And there are just too many cars that are trying to go through there, and they're going to find any way that they can to get onto the bridge. And so we can do the best to push them away, but it just moves the problem around. So the solution, or at least this proposal, should help reduce the negative impacts of this traffic, because it's at least moving it to a location that can handle the demand that's there today. So we'd still be having the same, or same number of vehicles going through, but at least they would not be queuing up so far. At least they would not be spreading out as throughout the neighborhood streets to find alternate routes to sneak around. And hopefully it would reduce the aggressive driving, just because they won't be delayed. I mean, it looks like it should reduce the travel time by 1.5 minutes, which is pretty significant for the area. And that means that's a lot of traffic that's not just sitting on the streets.
Right. I know, but my question is more about like going forward, like, I mean, not placing a loading dock on Clinton is an example, right. But I'm saying, like, will DOT do something to get ahead of it? I mean, I don't know what else the building needs, like, a garage entrance on Clinton Street, something like that. I mean, I'm just curious if you guys are doing anything to not contribute to the problem, but, so.
Yeah, okay. That's a great comment. I'm taking that down, and I know it's a big topic of discussion with the folks that do the site review, but I don't personally have a great answer for you.
Okay, I was fixing to open it up to the committee to talk to ourselves, but Michelle, is this directly for DOT you want to ask?
Yeah, I just have a question about the bike lane on Grand, and also if there's any proposal for a dedicated bus lane, which is something that we've heard. Why are we not having 2 protected bike lanes, and why are we not having a protected, like a designated bus lane? Those are my 2 questions.
Mm-hmm. The Transit Development Group is looking, I think, at improvements along the M14 corridor and M14A. I don't know what their plans are. I don't know that they're looking at this part of Grand Street. But perhaps they will. The problem right now with the making 2 protected lanes is that there are these concrete median islands, which we would have to remove. It's certainly possible, and we could look at that, but it would involve removing these pedestrian safety treatments in the middle of the street, and likely some significant parking and loading loss. So it's a much bigger project, but it's something that we could continue to explore.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to be cognizant of the time, it's 8 o'clock. We've been covering this for 45 minutes, and thank you very much. It was both the presentation and the comments and questions were very fruitful. Now, committee members, we want to talk amongst each other. Susan has raised her hand.
I just want to ask first, it sounded like you were looking for a resolution from us.
Oh. DOT?
Yes, if possible.
Okay, it would have, to be honest, would have been helpful if we knew in advance, because I would have asked actually for the slideshow in advance. So I just wanted the committee to be aware of that when they were discussing that.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Yeah, it's kind of, well, we'll do our best. It is difficult to write this kinds of resolutions on the fly. we can do a better job.
Is it possible, would it be just as good to get the resolution next month?
That would be okay with me if we did it next month, if that helps you all.
Because then they could get the slideshow and go through the things. So that might be something the committee wants to consider.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we shall, because it is better if we can explain it clearly to the rest of the board members who are not here for the presentation. So now committee members. Is there discussion about the presentation, the general situation? Okay, I'm not seeing hands raised. Oh, Michelle?
I just have a question about the resolution because as I think everyone on the committee knows, I drafted some language around the bike lane specifically. But I don't know, David, what you think about that, given that DOT now wants a resolution overall, but this one is very specifically tailored to the bike lane protection. So I can make a motion to move it to the floor to consider it if there's a second.
I'd second it.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Let me share my screen.
David, I think Susan's hand is up.
Okay, Susan, you go, and then we're going to discuss this. Susan?
Thank you. I was just asking procedurally, are you considering doing two different resolutions, one this month and one next month, or do you want to combine them together? I was just wondering how you're considering doing that.
Right. Well, this one is pretty focused, so I think we will want to do another one next month. We'll discuss that. Yeah, the wider one later. Michelle, I think it'd be helpful if you read this. Sure. I can summarize it before so that the public and everyone knows what's going on. But a draft has been brought, and now it's been moved and seconded to ask CB3 to ask for protected bike lanes along the whole length of Clinton from South Street up to Delancey Street. So I'm gonna let you read this now, Michelle. And
thanks. And just, so whereas the Clinton Street bike lane is a crucial bike artery for cyclists traveling between Manhattan and Brooklyn via the Williamsburg Bridge, and whereas Community Board 3 supports the use of alternative modes of transportation in the district, including bicycles, due to heavy vehicular traffic, creating dangerous conditions for residents, especially in the approach to the Williamsburg Bridge. And whereas the Clinton Street bike lane between South Street and East Houston Street, I should say Delancey Street, sorry. And Delancey Street, oh, actually I meant East Houston, but sorry guys. Is largely unprotected, either having no physical separation from the vehicular traffic lanes, being separated by weak plastic bollards, or having entrances wide enough to permit cars to travel in the bike lane. And whereas due to being unprotected, the Clinton Street bike lane is frequently blocked by cars, trucks, and other vehicles, impeding bike traffic and endangering cyclists and pedestrians using Clinton Street. And whereas experts say a major impediment for those seeking to cycle is safety, because cyclists in the United States are 6 times more likely to die than in countries that invest in bike infrastructure. Whereas blocked bike lanes specifically present a substantial risk to the safety of cyclists by forcing them into the bike lane and into vehicle traffic lanes. And whereas blocked bike lanes contribute to traffic congestion and impede vehicle traffic by forcing cyclists into vehicle traffic lanes. And whereas structural changes are necessary to protect the Clinton Street bike lane, remedy the current dangerous situation, and promote safe and efficient transit for cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. And whereas Department of Transportation Commissioner Ydanis Rodriguez has stated that he wants to protect existing bike lanes with, quote, sturdier and more permanent structures within the first 100 days, end quote, he is in his position. Therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 3 supports the Department of Transportation fully protecting the Clinton Street bike lane between South Street and East Houston Street from incursions by vehicles, with physical controls that may include jersey barriers, static, not plastic bollards, and or raising the bike lanes above street grade.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask if the committee members want to respond quickly about this, and then I'll go to Trevor immediately after other committee members who might want to. Or actually, Michelle, you're entitled to be the first speaker, having made the motion.
Oh, I mean, I live right here. I think everyone has heard me talk about this area. It's the reason I joined the community board, was to deal with this. It just makes me sad that we have this bike lane that is so easily impeded. I'm happy to show many photos that I have and videos of passenger vehicles, Ubers, UPS vehicles, trucks waiting to get into the Trader Joe's loading zone, driving on the sidewalk and then backing up into the loading zone. Police officers, everyone parks in this bike lane, and it just makes me sad that we don't have something safer. And I think we should fight for better for our community.
All right, thanks. Are there other committee members who want to speak? Michelle, if you could prioritize and pick a minute, maybe two of media that you'd like to share, it'd be easy for you to do. So committee members. All right, Trevor.
Be quick and just some concerns, not about the resolution itself, but procedure, because I'm not sure this is on our agenda. And my concern is really for and it may be unless I missed it, my concern is really for the area from South Street that goes up to Clinton, where there's a two-way protected bike lane. But on each side of that lane are two Nypd properties. When the bike lane was installed before, none of the tenant leaders were notified, and they were surprised to wake up the next morning and see a bike lane outside of their door. So I just think, and if it's on the agenda, it's not a big deal. This has nothing to do with the resolution itself, because the resolution is well needed, but just some consideration about a discussion on the resolution for something that's not on the agenda.
Okay, we will discuss that. That is a point, Trevor, that's well taken. I'm gonna let Susan speak first, and then I'm gonna ask the committee to speak about.
Yeah, so this is for DOT. I had been speaking with Jennifer Leung to prepare for the meeting, so I'm sure the information hopefully got to Carl. You know, I had specifically said that that these issues of the protected bike lane for Clinton would come up, and that Community Board 3 had in the past asked for a feasibility study for this, and if we could get a report on the feasibility study today also. You know, what happened to it? Was it done? Did they have any findings? So I just wanted to hear that from DOT, and also say that Trevor's, I think, making a good point about the agenda item being on the issue being on the agenda. So maybe, Carl, could you tell us about the feasibility study?
So I think it was miscommunicated to me. I thought you all were talking just about the section between Grand and Delancey. So I'm not sure if and where the feasibility study is for that. So I don't feel comfortable speaking to that.
I'm sorry, I really tried very hard to prepare for all this.
Okay, so committee, narrowly what Trevor is pointing out is that there's a policy, the board has a policy that committees should not be passing motions that were not pertinent to the agenda item. I don't remember the exact language of it, but that's the gist of it. So committee members, what are your thoughts about whether this is pertinent to the agenda item or not? Go ahead, Lee.
While it's pertinent, but more so since the agenda item was specifically Brandon Clinton, I could see why other sections of this neighborhood would need more notice about this particular resolution. I see Trevor's point. I would agree with it. And I would ask that this be put off until it's on the agenda for next month to give the rest of the community an opportunity to be heard on this, because this is not taking into consideration the folks from South Street North, giving them enough notice for input.
Other committee members have input? Go ahead, Tariq.
I agree with Lee that we hold off so that we can do the appropriate outreach to the other community members.
Are there more comments? Here's what I would suggest. If someone would make a motion that we postpone this until next month, we'll just put it on the agenda for next month, and we can have a up or down vote on that from the committee.
I motion.
Well, Susan's raised her hand.
Yeah, this is already a written policy of the board, so it's not on the agenda, and I don't see why we would be voting on a written policy of the board, as opposed to just saying that we'll put it on the agenda for next month.
If I can summarize that, I think that the argument is that it might be pertinent to a very broad topic of Grant and Clinton, but let's let the committee decide this. I believe that I just heard a motion attempted.
I motion to table this to our committee meeting in February.
Okay, so that's debatable. Is there any debate on that? Then let's take a vote on this. There are 6 of us. I believe we're all present. Let's just do it by voice. I think it'll be easier. Wendy, are you able to do that? This is on whether to postpone this until next month. In other words, have it on the agenda next month as an item that clearly explains what the motion would be.
For the vote, do you want to just do like hands,
yeah,
or would that be easier?
Only 6 of us. If you could just do a quick roll call vote.
Okay, David Crane.
I'm the chair, come back to me.
Michelle?
Yes, as long as I have the promise it will be on the agenda next month. Thank you.
Wendy, yes. Lee Berman?
Yes.
Tariq?
Yes.
And Kenya?
Yes.
Okay. David?
Yes. Okay, so we will put this on the agenda for the next month. And is there another part? Are there any other comments, or feel free to raise your hand if I have overlooked something you said. Sorry, I'm not holding the stack very well. This is so many moving parts. Yeah, Susan.
I just want to say this is just procedural. So you're going to add this vote to the minutes, and
we're going to, yeah, well, to the minutes, yeah, that we that it was attempted and that it was has been postponed, and we will put this on the agenda for next month, and we will also put an item to complete a resolution on the proposed changes for the Delancey Grand.
Okay, and would you be asking DOT to come back to help with that?
Yes, I would. I think it would be advisable in case there are questions or something. Actually, committee didn't really discuss tonight. Do we want to discuss the actual points of the proposal, or do we want to wait until next month? It is 8:15, so I'm not saying I want to draw this out. Are there any discussion, pro or con, on the exact proposal that they did, that DOT gave us? All right, I think that we can close this item. And I think the last thing we have to do is simply vote to adjourn.
And can we just ask DOT to send this slideshow to us?
Oh, yes, please. That'll be helpful because that'll help us to prepare a draft. And Susan, will the office be able to help with that, or do you want the committee to do that?
No, we can help with that. If Carl will send the slideshow to me, I'll both put it on the website and we'll use it to help draft the agenda, the motion.
Okay, so the motion draft, for some people who are not familiar, it'll largely be the whereases that describe the facts. And then of course the committee will have to work on our position next month. So can we have a roll call? Well, let's have a roll call vote to adjourn. We'll adjourn the meeting if there are no objections. And now we'll have a roll call vote for attendance. That's what I meant.
Okay, David Crane.
Still here.
Mm-hmm. Michelle Cooper-Smith.
Present.
Wendy Lee, present. Lee Berman.
Present.
Tariq Doro.
Present.
And Kenya Hernandez.
Here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.